Chinatown Kid is a Hong Kong action drama film directed by Chang Che and starring Alexander Fu Sheng, one of the most iconic actors of 1970s martial arts cinema. Produced by Shaw Brothers, the film combines elements of crime, coming of age, and martial arts, reflecting both the studio's signature style and the challenges of the Chinese diaspora in America. But before continuing with the video, I want to show you something. Take Me Out bonus only at deadlygrace.com. Discover content that pushes boundaries. Visit deadlygrace.com, where movies are too intense for YouTube.
You never called.
I never said I would.
The film follows Tan Tung, Alexander Fu Sheng, a young Chinese immigrant who arrives in San Francisco in search of a better life. However, he quickly finds himself embroiled in the world of organized crime in Chinatown, where he must navigate loyalties, betrayals, and his own sense of justice. The story explores themes of cultural identity, corruption, and the struggle for survival in a hostile environment. Tan Tung represents the experience of many Chinese immigrants in the U.S., facing racism, exploitation, and the difficulty of adapting without losing their roots. The film shows how ethnic communities can be controlled by local mafias, reflecting real problems in Chinatowns at the time. Fu Sheng's character oscillates between his desire to prosper and his morality, a common conflict in Chang Che's characters. Chang Che, known for his violent, masculine films, such as The Five Deadly Venoms, leaves his mark with brutal action sequences and a somber tone. The cinematography captures the oppressive atmosphere of Chinatown, with claustrophobic settings that reflect the trap the characters live in. Unlike other kung fu films of the time, Chinatown Kid takes a more realistic approach, with fewer choreographed fights and more street violence.
到我大咗咧，就會更識人情世故噶嘛。其實我都可以算睇住 TVB 大。當無線越大咧，當然係。
Fu Sheng, usually associated with light-hearted and heroic roles, as in the Shaolin Temple, plays a darker and more vulnerable character here. His natural charisma helps humanize Tan Tung, making his transformation from innocent to hardened believable. The film was an attempt to expand his acting range beyond traditional martial arts cinema. At the time, Chinatown Kid wasn't as commercially successful as Fu Sheng's other films, but over time it has gained recognition for its mature approach. It's considered one of Chang Che's most personal films, with a script that critiques the exploitation of immigrants. Tragically, Fu Sheng died young, in 1983, which adds a layer of melancholy to his films, especially this one, where his character struggles to survive in a cruel world. Similar in tone to Sonny Chiba's The Street Fighter, 1974, but with a more dramatic approach. Less fantastical than other Shaw Brothers productions of the time, such as the 36th Chamber of Shaolin, but just as powerful.
怎么会脏啊？哎呀，你糟老头子啊！你呀，快打架，想怎么样？交给你。 位吃，全算我的。
Unlike kung fu films set in imperial or rural China, Chinatown Kid reflects the migrant experience in the 1970s, a subject little explored at the time. It connects with films like John Woo's The Killer, 1989, but from an earlier and less stylized perspective. Shaw Brothers and the Western Market. The film was an attempt by Shaw Brothers to reach out to Western audiences, using urban U.S. locations, filmed in Hong Kong, but with sets mimicking San Francisco. However, it retained Chang Chea's typical hyper-violent style, which limited its international success at the time. Chinatown isn't a place of opportunity, but a labyrinth of crime and exploitation. Signs in Chinese and English highlight the protagonist's cultural duality. Tan Tung arrives with ideals, but discovers the system is controlled by gangsters, Chinese and American. The film shows how poverty and racism drive immigrants toward crime. Less stylized choreography. Unlike The Five Venoms, 1978, the fights here are more street level, with knives and dirty punches, reflecting the harshness of the real world. Chang Chea blends wuxia, tragic heroes, with elements of The Godfather, 1972, especially in the plots of loyalty and betrayal. Fu Sheng often played optimistic heroes, e.g., disciples of Shaolin, but here his character is more bleak. His charismatic smile fades as the violence corrupts him. Tragic irony, in real life, Fu Sheng died in a car accident at age 28, which adds weight to his performance as a young man whose future is cut short. Although it wasn't a hit upon its release, it is valued today for its thematic audacity and its rarity within the Shaw Brothers catalog. A precursor to Asian film noir, films like Infernal Affairs, 2002, and The Gangster, The Cop, The Devil, 2019, would later explore similar themes of organized crime and ambiguous morality. It depicts Hong Kong's view of the United States in the 1970s, with stereotypes, Italian mobsters, corrupt police officers, but also empathy for immigrants. It is one of his most dramatic performances, demonstrating that he could go beyond kung fu comedy. The 115-minute version of Chinatown Kid stands out as the best representation of the film in terms of action and entertainment. In contrast, the alternative version, tailored for certain Southeast Asian markets and heavily censored, is less impactful but introduces some novel elements. Despite its comparative inferiority, the 90-minute version includes additional scenes that could have enriched the export release had they been incorporated. Furthermore, in Chang Chea's memoirs, there is mention of an ending for another cut of the film, which is absent from both the export version and the shorter, family-friendly edition. Chang Chea stated that bringing Chinatown Kid to the big screen took him 2 years, 1 year of planning and another of filming. According to him, he had shot some scenes in Hong Kong in 1976 but halted production to begin work on Shaolin Temple, 1976, and Naval Commandos, 1977. The day before starting his naval war film, the first of its kind, the director announced that Chinatown Kid, 1977, and The Brave Archer, 1977, would be his next productions. He also revealed the upcoming wedding of his star, Fu Sheng, and his then-girlfriend, Jenny Sang. The production of the film required shoots in Hong Kong, Taiwan, and the United States. Chang Chea planned to travel to the US only after completing Naval Commandos and The Brave Archer. Finally, on May 1, 1977, the director and his team departed from Hong Kong to work on exterior shots in the US. Fu Sheng and his wife, Jenny Sang, arrived earlier, taking the opportunity to enjoy a belated honeymoon, as they had married in December 1976. Initially, the couple intended to travel in March to film kids' outdoor scenes, but scheduling conflicts delayed their plans for another 2 months. Chang Chea traveled to America accompanied by his wife Amy, his assistant, and cinematographer Sao Hui-chi. Alongside them were Fu Sheng and his wife, all set for 4 days of filming on location in San Francisco's Chinatown. Meanwhile, Kung Mutu, another of Chang's cinematographers, remained in Hong Kong because his visa could not be processed in time for the trip. However, there was another reason for Cao's inclusion. Although he was not originally part of the group, Sir Run Shaw instructed him to go since he spoke English, a skill that could be useful if an interpreter was needed. Chang Che had an ambivalent relationship with the press. While he enjoyed the attention, he also found it bothersome. To avoid being questioned about filming permits, he decided to keep his trip a secret, without informing journalists or publicists. If anyone asked him before leaving Hong Kong, he would say his destination was Taipei. Although he had announced months earlier that he would be filming in the United States, the exact date remained unknown. Despite journalists' suspicions, Shaw's publicity department denied any information to maintain the production's mystery. Upon arriving in San Francisco, he was identified at the airport, first by a civilian and then by a journalist. To avoid an interview, he employed strategies to evade the reporter and continue his work without interruptions, managing to leave the country without revealing details of his project. The trip combined work and leisure for the team, which operated with a guerrilla-style filming approach. The strategy was to get in and out quickly. They had 2 vehicles, 1 convertible, and they spontaneously filmed action scenes with Fu Sheng, allowing them to withdraw quickly if recognized. Chang Che designed the filming discreetly, hiding the camera and communicating through signals to start shooting. The production included nighttime shots, footage of Fu Sheng traveling through Chinatown on a tram, and scenes of iconic locations. Although they managed to capture around 600 meters of film in outdoor settings, only a small portion was used in the final version. If the film had been shot more extensively in the United States rather than relying on recreating San Francisco's streets in the Shaw Brothers studio, its production value would have been higher. Although director Chang successfully conveyed his message, the execution lacks the rawness needed to do justice to the subject. Greater authenticity could have been achieved if permissions had been granted to film more extensively in the real locations. While the depiction of Chinatown streets and buildings in the United States manages to feel somewhat lived in, it mostly comes across as artificial. This stands in contrast to the lavish period sets that Shaw Brothers were famous for. After wrapping up filming in San Francisco, the team took a few days to relax before returning to Hong Kong. Chang Che, widely regarded as Hong Kong's most dedicated filmmaker at the time, spent 2 days in Las Vegas before flying to Hawaii. During his 8-day stay abroad, he and his wife also visited family. However, months later, San Francisco's Chinatown became the scene of a tragic gang-related incident between the Joe Boys and the Watch Chinatown, later known as the Golden Dragon Massacre. In the early hours of September 4, 1977, at 2:40 a.m. Pacific Time, the rivalry between the two groups resulted in the deaths of 5 individuals. Ironically, none of the victims were affiliated with the Watch Chinatown, the intended target of the attackers. Fu Sheng was already well known among Western audiences before Chinatown Kid reached the international market. A July 1976 issue of Southern Screen reported that the demand for Fu Sheng's celebrity photographs in the United States was booming, comparing his rising popularity to that of the late Bruce Lee. At the same time, the article emphasized that his distinctive appearance allowed him to stand out among other stars in the eyes of foreign viewers. He had also gained some recognition in Japan, thanks to fans who had seen his Shaolin films in theaters. The relationship between Fu Sheng and director Chang Che at this point in their careers is noteworthy. For the actor, Chang was more than just a mentor, he saw him as a father figure. In an interview, he expressed his deep appreciation by stating, "Without him, I wouldn't exist." In another instance, Fu Sheng mentioned that he fully trusted only 5 people in his life: his parents, his wife, T. Lung, and the esteemed Chang Che. What makes this film particularly special is the subtle autobiographical undertone woven into its narrative. Chang Che shared that when Fu Sheng started his training at the Shaw Actors Training Academy, he earned just 500 Hong Kong dollars. At the time, there was an expensive watch he wanted but couldn't afford. Despite coming from a wealthy family, he chose to be independent and set a goal to purchase it with his own earnings once he achieved success, which he eventually did. The choreography by Li Ka-ting and Robert Tai Chi Shin, though somewhat unconventional in a modern setting, delivers well-executed action sequences. Among the standout moments are the assault on the Green Dragon headquarters and the climactic scene, where Fu Sheng, dressed in white, a color symbolizing death in Chinese culture and a nod to David Chang's tragic hero in Vengeance, from the 1970s, faces the White Dragon gang with Sun Qian's support. It remains unclear which fight it was, but reports indicate that Fu Sheng sprained his right ankle while filming a martial arts sequence, preventing him from completing the action. However, he managed to conceal the injury skillfully. The film is quite engaging and is narrated in the distinctive, energetic style of Chang Che, though it is not among his finest works. The alternative version is worth watching for its different approach to the character of Tan Tung, which in some ways surpasses the longer version. Filmed during the director's transition to Kung Fu movies, ideas from previous successes, Chinatown Kid, in its export version, has remained a popular title among fans worldwide and continues to attract new viewers.